Hey everyone, I thought I would jump on here and do a quick live. I don't know how long I'll be, but it really is something just wanting to share. I recently launched this group, Revolutionary Aromatherapy, after a point of clarity in the month of November. It originates from the method that I have created called Aromagenomics, and I figured I should probably get a little clearer with you as to what this is really all about. So I come at this with a background in pharmacology. I've got over 30 years actually working with oils, but it's been a very profound point in my life to really find a way to restore vitality and function. And I was noticing that within the allopathic model, which is symptom relief, that we just weren't getting anywhere. We were managing, but it wasn't. There was no progress. And so it's really been that desire to see progress that brought me to the point of aromagenomics, because it does include epigenetic studies, working with the epigenome. I don't view the epigenome as a problem. So before I go on any further with that, allow me to clarify. Einstein once said, or he's known to have said, we cannot solve or fix our problems with the same line of thinking that created them. And the way I see our current medical model is, and well, we're just doing it everywhere in the world. We create a problem and that we're just putting Band-Aid down after Band-Aid. And I'm about ready to go do a video on YouTube because a big push for me right now is, especially is childhood obesity. I've got a number of people that I've been supporting with children who are starting to put on excessive amounts of weight. And and I'm going to talk about that over there, and it has to do with the endocannabinoid system and obesity. But through what I wanted to say about that is through the investigation of, well, you might be wondering why I even considered the endocannabinoid system and obesity, because it wasn't something that you randomly find out there. It has a lot to do with the fact that something else that I've been talking about is the blood type diet, and being able to distinguish the fact that there are certain constituents within oils that influence acetylation and phosphorylation, and those are the pathways that monitor the environment and then communicate to the DNA of a need for some systemic changes, in which case the DNA at that point begins to alter itself and signal the production of oxidative stress and inflammation. So there's an initializing chemistry that's involved. And this came about through my own diagnosis with cancer and arthritis. It's like I'd been on this journey for so long, but I couldn't ever get to beyond symptom relief. And then when I had my own, push, that's when I'd made this discovery. But as I said, when you have that idea that you can't fix a problem with the same line of thinking that created it, and then I see how no matter what we're doing in the world, if we screw something up or we do something and all of a sudden it starts to lead to problems, I don't fault anybody for that, truthfully. I mean, as if I'm anybody, but in my own mind, I don't sit back and lay judgment on anybody, because the truth is life is organic. So it's virtually unpredictable. So it stands to reason that we would do something and then something is going to fall out of service. Therefore, we start and we do something else. So these are the Band-Aid effects. And so like with this endocannabinoid system, technically what we have in this world is a planet full of estrogenic-like chemicals, and endocrine disrupting chemicals, man-made. Essential oils, and that's something that we can talk more about here in this group. Essential oils do actually are considered endocrine disruptors because many of them influence the hormonal system. But aside from that, just in man-made chemicals, there's over 70,000 of them that have been confirmed as endocrine disruptors. So we have a world of hormonally upsetting chemistry, right? And it's altering the system, it's activating the stress system. And ultimately, what we then see happening is a lot of inflammation being triggered, okay? And so if we're going to continue, so my theory is, it's just time, sorry, I think I don't know what happened there. As I was saying, it's, there's one model, which is symptom relief. And what I've been on this path is to find a way to create stability and to create this inner peace. And so through when somebody asked me the other day, and I think I posted it here, about writing on the blood type diet, and I just dove into it and actually uncovered exactly what our blood types are, which they are our first line of defense. It's an evolution. It's part of our evolution. It's the way the body adapted. And see, this is the kind of stuff that brings me to my knees when I think about how much we as a species really try to intervene with nature, and where nature doesn't need us to intervene. And so with the blood types, for instance, the oldest blood type is the blood type A. And then eventually there was a morphing into the O type. But then there was the evolution of a B type. And I say morphing because you can have an A parent and, two A parents, or an A and a B parent, and they still have an O blood type child. It's just, it's an adaptation. But initially, these blood types were more distinguishable in certain areas or environments. And yet what it comes down to was the exposure to viruses and bacteria in the area, in the environment, surrounding environment, that the humanoid, or the blood, began to generate these blood types. They're basically, if you're an A type, you have A antigen in you, and you have antibodies against the B antigen. Okay, this is the reason why you can't mix bloods. So, but to know that the body did that just blows my mind. That it did that, and humans didn't have to do a damn thing to make that happen. It did it nature just did it on its own. The same can be said for the endogenous opioid system. Okay, initially, I think through the Human Genome Project, it's been established that that's been around. I mean, we first identified it in the human genome around 100,000 years ago. And then it eventually began to diversify, where the humans have the most complex system. I think we have 4 endogenous opioid receptors, and they are part of the epigenome. The point, although we recognize the opioid system, right, for pain relief, and it makes sense. I mean, we were hunting and running and gathering and getting clubbed and bitten, and I mean, there was pain, and we didn't have any pain medicine to speak of. So the body had to, in order to survive, it was a stress response. And this, again, is the beauty of stress. This is where the foundation for Aromagenomics comes in. So that level of stress from the environment provoked adaptations that provided these genetic receptors, number one. And number two, the really cool thing is also endogenous opioids are for bonding. It's that, the pair bonding, where we mate for life, so to speak. And there's only so many animals in the world that actually mate for life. Humans are meant to be, are designed, we're wired for that. And so, but it was, otherwise we would have killed each other off. So there had to be a way for nature to kind of like settle things down a little bit and get us to reproduce. And that's really another level of the endogenous opiate system. This is the endorphins, okay? This is why when they say, after sex, we have this blah feeling, right? It's just it's the endorphins are flowing, or when you exercise, right? It's just that those are the endorphins being released, and endorphins are our natural opiates. So the point of this is that these things occurred in nature without our influence or interference. We didn't have to do anything for this stuff to take place. And yet we continue to build technology, and we have so many different ways of imposing the environment on the human body. And so what we end up doing is like, oh shit, we've done this, so now we have to put this Band-Aid on, and oh god, that didn't work, so now I gotta put this Band-Aid on. And I've noticed this, like I said, in my work on the obesity with these kids. There's a treatment that they're actually, there's different treatments that they're trying to do, and I'll just share a little bit with you right now. Initially there was an antagonist called, pardon me, it's called it's RIMONABANT, and I think they've actually pulled it off the market. But that was considered a CB1 antagonist, CB1 receptor antagonist. So the interesting thing about that is a couple of things. So the CB1 receptor is where we produce the anandamide, which is the neurotransmitter of bliss. Anandamide means bliss. When the body, the initializing chemistry that I mentioned a little while ago, is activated, histamine is involved. And with the release of histamine, arachidonic acid is now produced rather than anandamide. So the CB1 receptor, this is the beauty of the epigenome and why I say it's not dysfunctional. And this really is laying out the foundation for aromagenomics, believe it or not. So the CB1 receptor will produce anandamide when the body is, everything's kind of copacetic. Everything's in, bliss. But when the body's stressed, like I said, histamine's released, arachidonic acid is produced, inflammation begins to, there's a whole number of the chemicals that come out, and these are the initializing ones. Although our digestive system slows down with chronic 24/7 distress, the appetite becomes skewed. Okay, this is where stress eating comes in. This is where people begin to put on weight because they're stress eating, because the arachidonic acid is being produced, but it's also there's a stimulation to the appetite. So with this particular medication, they're trying to block that appetite stimulant. Now, it involves more than arachidonic acid. There's other hormones involved, so it becomes a hormonal issue. But nevertheless, with this medication, they discovered that it was actually creating anxiety, depression, and suicidal tendencies. Well, I'm not surprised. And I say that because they're not really doing anything about the histamine. And histamine, when it's not being deactivated and metabolized and deactivated properly, it can trigger depression, brain fog, anxiety, irritability, and so forth. So it would make sense. So they took that off the market, and now they're trying to block the CB2 receptor, which, with another antagonist, which I find fascinating because this is one more Band-Aid, right? Because right now we are big on selling CBD, and CBD is a CB2 receptor agonist. So what I'm hearing in all of this is the potential for obesity or weight gain when you actually begin to take, and this is my problem with, and that's my problem. I'm not trying to make it your problem. It's just my problem. This is, when I say it's my problem, it's my challenge. I'd rather use that. I like the word challenge better because it's a summons to show up. So 86, the word problem. This is my challenge when I hear things like this, because I've never been an advocate for single-minded activities or single constituents. Even if it is plant-based, but most of the CBD that we have in the market isn't plant-based. It might be cultivated in a lab in yeast, but it's not originating from the actual plants themselves. So there's no synergy there. And when it's grown in a lab and not with the normal constituents that it would be found out in nature, it's got a different reactivity to it. So and then beyond that, there is the singling out of trying to target one specific gene, but there's a whole system to take into consideration, not just one. So the epigenome, while it's being promoted as dysfunctional, defective, mutated, right? We hear all these words, genetic mutations, we don't talk about them as adaptations or alterations. So, but that's what they are. Because as I pointed out a little while ago, anandamide or arachidonic acid, depending on what's necessary for the body. The same can be said for thyroid hormone. When the stress system is activated, the thyroid hormones are diminished. Catecholamines are accelerated. So there's a lot of changes that are occurring in the system simply because the stress system is activated. Another really good one to share is the angiotensin II receptor. In a normal relaxed state, the angiotensin II receptor is turned off. But when the stress system is activated, that receptor is now turned on. And what goes even further is there's another gene further upstream, so to speak, called the DDPF4 gene, and that's the gene that actually metabolizes gluten and casein. That one gets deactivated. So when angiotensin II is activated, the gluten and casein are metabolized, gets deactivated. Now you have what? You've got gluten and casein sensitivities. This is the reason why GFCF diets are so popular these days, because it's basically saying that your angiotensin II receptor is on hyperdrive. But again, the point to that is that the epigenome is designed to be altered. It's controlled by the DNA, and it's designed to be that way to help us survive the moment and then be deactivated, so to speak, and go back into a more relaxed state. And then all systems go back to thriving. It's not meant to go 24/7, and this is the reason why we're seeing degenerative disease. So when we approach this from the allopathic model, which is symptom relief, and we're targeting such specific actions as very particular receptors, which is what medications do. And I'm not against medications. I have a background in pharmacology, and the whole point to Aromagenomics is to work with medications if medications are involved. It's about oh man, what was I going? I just lost it again. The whole point is that we target these genes, and then so if you have a targeted, let's just say a medication, and well, I the first one that comes to mind is not a really good example, but Abilify is the first one that came to mind, which is a psychotropic medication, and I think that affects like 25 different hormones and neurotransmitters receptors. It's an outrageous, and that may sound like a lot, which it is a lot because most medications don't even go that high. But in this case, that's a lot of neurotransmitter hormonal receptors that are being influenced by this one medication. But in the grand scheme of things, 25 receptors in a whole body is nothing. So now what you've just done is you've activated certain activities on this receptor and deactivated activities on the other receptor, but the whole system has to switch, just as I pointed out with the angiotensin. So it's not just one switch that gets flipped. It becomes like a railroad series of switches. So that's the allopathic model. With the aromagenomic model, what we're doing is incorporating essential oils to round this out and actually provide stability to the system. So this is where the use of oils becomes different than what we've become accustomed to seeing in books and on websites. We do look at the symptom relief. We do pay attention to what symptoms are being used, but it's more about what's in the bottle, which is what I was talking about in that video yesterday when I went live in the Synergessence page. It's about what's in your bottle. Those constituents are absolutely necessary to know so that you can make better informed decisions as to which oils to use and begin to create a practice around using oils that focus, that take digestion into consideration specifically. That you do want to know what the symptoms are. And the symptoms could be anything from insomnia to achy joints to to rashes. I mean, anything that's labeled a discomfort that doesn't have a diagnosed disease. I mean, even a disease itself to me is a symptom. So it could be something as minor as, period cramps to cancer, okay? Those are all symptoms of something that's going on in the system. So understanding what that individual is going through and then beginning to design oil selections around what they're going through and if there's any medications involved, so that you can round out and create a foundation of stability. When I say round out, I mean actually take into consideration. So like example would be if you're taking an antidepressant, you don't want to use oils that are antidepressants. Okay, so that means it would eliminate all your, basically your citrus oils, because we know those to be antidepressants. And then in fact you don't want to, because the limonene, which extends into other oils, binds to the serum albumin in the blood, and the serum albumin is another form of detoxing the body. So when the medication particles, some of what they do is the serum albumin kind of like travels through the body, and it's like a cleaner, so it'll grab these particles and eliminate them from the body. That said, limonene is a known serum albumin. It binds to serum albumin. So if you're using limonene and it's binding, but it's also supposed to be binding to this antidepressant, you've now created a potential for adverse reactions, possibly in the moment, possibly a month from now. Okay, and then so we have to take that in. So when we're taking that, like that direct, so if we're taking an antidepressant, we don't want to, what I did is I just turned off a call that was coming in. We don't want to do something we don't want to duplicate that mechanism of action, is what I'm trying to say. So if we're going to round something out, if you're taking an antidepressant, you might want to focus on digestion, okay? You might want to improve upon your body's use of acetylcholine in the digestive tract and in the bowels, because oftentimes the bowels become compromised in some way, whether there's IBS or constipation so these factors all need to be taken into consideration. And so, like I said, I want to start going live here with you guys, and I do really want to field your questions to know what you would like to hear about. I'm happy to come on here live with you, to talk with you here. I'm also focusing right now on, like I said, obesity. In fact, I've just launched a program called Why Wait, that talks about, it addresses the whys and provides solutions to the weight issues, because it is a hormonal issue, and I'm really focused on children, because the children, especially children with autism, they're more prone to being having weight issues than children who haven't been diagnosed with autism. But just obesity on its own has become very significant, and primarily because as a child, when I was 7, in the second grade, I basically weighed 90 pounds. I was 87, 88 pounds. They used to weigh us in the hallway as a classroom. We'd go down to the nurse's office, and they would just line us up, and they'd weigh you, measure your height, and they'd call it all out to the person who was writing it all down. And I just remember feeling ashamed. I was ashamed of myself, because I was the fattest girl in the class. I mean, almost 90 pounds at the age of 7. I had boys tell me they didn't like me because my legs were fat. I mean, it was just a horrible experience. And the truth is that I was already hormonally imbalanced at such a young age. I've been dealing with IBS since I can recall. I mean, prior to kindergarten. So there was a lot of issues that were going on for me at a very, very early age. And so this is very near and dear to my heart. And when I have people that I know with children with autism, it becomes a very big deal to me. So if you know people who have children with autism and would be willing to join this group and find out more about how they can help their children with oils, please, invite them. And again, with your own questions, if you have a particular health condition that you would like to speak about, please bring it to the table. That's what I'm here for. I have a lot of information, and I can just start spewing it, but if it's not something that you want to hear about, then it's going to go unheard. And I want this to be a meaningful experience for you. So please let me know how I can serve you. And if anything I said in this video did not make sense as to what the mission of Aromagenomics is all about, revolutionary aromatherapy, it's really about changing the way we approach a problem. Okay, we can't fix the problem, or in this case, we can't fix the challenge. We can't show up for the challenge with the same level of thinking that created the problem. So these issues that we're facing are challenges, and the only way to deal with them is to come at it from a different angle. And that's what Aromagenomics is here to do, is to create the foundation for vitality and function. Because we all deserve that. Our children deserve that. We deserve to have healthier, older lives. So let me know what questions you have. I'm here to serve you, and I really appreciate you being here. And just want to welcome you all for signing up. And I can't tell you what it means to me, and I look forward to hearing back from you. All right, I'll talk to you later. Thanks.